Welcome back to Account Management Secrets. Today's guest is someone who has climbed literally every rung in the post-sales ladder, Mike Rapp. Mike is the CRO at IntelePeer, and in this conversation today, he breaks down what it really takes to go from an account manager to a revenue executive. In the episode, we talk about how to transition from account manager to CRO and what most people get wrong doing that, the non-negotiables for running a top-performing account management team, and the C-suite argument for investing in account management. As you're about to hear, Mike's experience is unusually relevant for account managers who want to grow their impact and think more like executives. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you're an account manager, you already know this. You're the one keeping the business running. You own the client relationships, drive the revenue, and solve the tough problems for your customers. But here's the challenge. Most companies don't give account managers the training or recognition they deserve. That's what you'll get here on the Account Management Secrets podcast. I'm Alex Raymond, and after working with thousands of account managers, I know what separates the best from the rest. In this show, we cover exactly what you need to succeed, handling tough client conversations, driving renewals and upsells with confidence, and proving your value every single day. There's no fluff, no outdated sales tactics, just real practical strategies you can use right now to grow your accounts and build a successful career. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Just to kick off here, tell us more about that process. Tell us more about the sequence that got you from project manager and then account manager up into senior roles and then into CRO. What were those steps along the way?
Yeah, no, happy to. So it's interesting, right? As you mentioned, my career kind of started on the professional services side of the world, right? Project management in technology. And it was when I had shifted from working at consulting firms to an technology software provider or solution provider, where I was leading project management activities. And given the SaaS world that we were in, the tie between onboarding a customer onto the SaaS platform was directly linked to revenue realization. And it was kind of at that point once I had kind of demonstrated, hey, the tie of those two together when the company was establishing an account management practice. That's kind of where I made the jump and said, hey, I've been doing the implementation stuff for 10, 15 years of my career, we'll say it. Now I want to get more on the revenue side, the business side of the accounts, because I always kind of had that tilt to it, even on the professional services days. So it was great to get into the account management side. And then certainly when you think about account management and the scope of that, both kind of serving accounts, retaining, growing them. So you kind of you get into that whole topic of account management and customer success and the blend of those functions and what it does, right? That's where I spent, a couple of years doing that, leading some large strategic accounts. And as we built out the team, as I was one of the first ones in the AM slot for the SaaS company, kind of grew into a leadership role, managing a team of account management and customer success, and then ultimately rolled delivery back into that, right? Because delivery was a key part of revenue realization. And then, as I made, the kind of the next change to another next leadership role in account management, kind of a bigger account base. I went from like 100 accounts to 2,500 accounts in that role about 5 years ago. And from that, it becomes pretty strategic to a company, right? When you have an install base that big, it becomes that much more important, right? As we know, it's cheaper to retain and grow customers than it is to acquire new customers. And so when you think about a SaaS business with recurring revenue, the existing customer base and net retention and gross retention are critically important. And through my journey there, as we were actually doing very well in the install base, adopting new product sets that we were bringing to the market around AI, it kind of naturally, we'll call it transition, when there were some spots in leadership that needed to be taken over from a new logo side, kind of going, and adding that new logo sales component of the world, right? Because in account management, you're certainly selling, right? And some will debate that maybe new logo selling's easier versus account management selling's easier. On account management, you have to realize you have to deal with reality, right? You have the reality of what the customer has been using your product, right? And the new logo side, everything's all shiny and new, and there's no baggage, if you will. Um, so anyway, through that journey of kind of getting that exposure to both the account management and new logo side, as we were our chief revenue officer was retiring in my current company, it was a natural progression into that role, kind of having the full end-to-end revenue cycle view from selling to growing to keeping in that whole end-to-end view. And you're right, it is as I talk to other CROs, a lot of them naturally come up through purely the sales side, not the account management implementation side. But I think it gives me a healthy perspective of saying, hey, it's not just getting the new logos. We got to keep the revenue in the barn as well. And that's critically important to growing a SaaS company. If you have too much revenue going out the back door, you've got to sell that much more to grow the revenue overall.
Yeah, for sure. So you started in the delivery or the professional services type of roles, moved into
Hmm.
account management. You've done individual strategic accounts.
Hmm.
You've been managing big accounts for your company. This was back in the days at Interactions, right?
Correct. Yep.
And then you led a team, and then when you moved from Interactions to IntelePeer, the overall customer set grew from about 1,000 to 2,500. Did I get that right?
Yeah. So at Interactions, we kind of had a customer set of like 150 customers, and then as we went to IntelePeer, we have a customer set of about 2,500 customers.
Got it. All right. So much bigger set, and then you grow from there in your role into running that entire post sales, and then get the opportunity to do the CRO piece. What were the things that made it easy, and what were the things that made it difficult for you to go from the SVP of account management into the CRO role? Like what skills did you have to learn, and what things did you think, oh, this slots in perfectly?
I'll start with the latter first. I think it's for me being analytical and data driven and how I look at things and make decisions kind of fit in naturally, right? When you look at, existing run rates, you're looking at, churn or downsell, where's the white space analysis in the existing accounts. And so that, data analysis, and you transfer that to, all right, how much pipeline do we need? What are our close rates? What are our loss rates along stage, and that kind of data analysis piece, no matter probably what the role, if you're data forward in how you look at things, whether you can produce the data yourself or someone produces it for you and you're doing that analysis. I think that that's key for any leadership role, because you can justify decisions to the rest of the leadership, to the board, based on the data that you're able to communicate, understand, etc. Kind of the biggest changes, I would say, um, new logo selling is different than, install base selling, right? You're at least a known quantity in the install base world. You might not like what you're known for or what particular subsets, but you're certainly known. On the new logo side, you've got to define, go to markets. Where are we going to go? Where's the product market fit? And really refine that. And so you're kind of starting from a little bit of blank sheet of paper, right? Because you're trying to, at least for us with our AI capabilities, figure out where that right fit is. Where do we spend our time and effort? Vertical focus, go to market approach. Where do we spend the dollars we have to generate funnel? What do we have the reps spend their time on? Are we tracking meetings and calls, or are we tracking outcomes, right? And so there's kind of just different new motions and things to learn, on the sales side. And then when you think about a CRO role, you got to look at the whole picture, right? It's not just, hey, today I'm going to focus on new sales and I'm going to be head down on that. That's not how it works, right? You've got to look at the whole picture of revenue. When you think about approaches, you got to think about, all right, how do I apply a product launch to how we're going to go to market a new logo, how we're going to apply it to install base. Um, what's that going to do? Is that going to contract any of our existing revenue? And so there's a lot of different perspectives you have to look at it. So it's probably more big picture thinking was a bigger adjustment, right? Where, maybe if you're just doing account management and leading that organization, or you're just leading sales, you can focus tactically on the execution there, and you do your quarterly planning and all those kind of things. In the CRO role, yes, you have to be tactical, certainly, but it requires more big picture thinking in terms of, all right, how is these things going to impact the whole spectrum of the revenue?
And I presume within there, one of the things that makes an account management leader particularly well suited for a CRO role is the credibility you already have because you've worked with so many customers. So you can walk into a new client, immediately see patterns, make connections, kind of track that back to other areas where you've either had success or you can warn them about risks. So presumably there's a lot of legitimacy or credibility that comes with that puts new customers or prospects at ease, right?
Certainly, right. And I think being able to walk to a customer and say, regardless of the role and perspective, is like, hey, this is what we've seen at 10 other customers that look like you. And here's the challenges they had, and here's how we overcame them. Or here's the trends we're seeing. Does that resonate with you? Being able to tell those kind of stories, no matter what the role, right? CRO, or if you're new logo selling, um, is important. That's probably one of the biggest things that I appreciate more now is we got to make sure that the new logo selling team is fully immersed and can almost speak like they've been talking to the install base customers as an account manager. So they can tell the stories like, oh, to be consultative in a solution sale, right? And solution selling, which is what we're doing. We're selling outcomes and results with AI. You got to be able to tell the success stories, right? And you got to be able to be consultative and earn that trust and build that trust. And that's where I think a lot of the account management skills and knowledge that are transferable to the new logo sales world.
Yeah, for sure, totally. On the point that you made earlier, which is, which is harder, new business selling or expansion selling to your install base. There's some pretty clear data here. I come down on the view that new customer sales is harder. If you look at win rates, for example, so we've got data from EBSTA and Pavilion from their 2024 study. Customer win rates in their data set are 18% for new customers versus 45% for existing customers. So that's almost triple. Sales cycles are 91 days for new customers versus 52 days for existing customers. So almost, half. And then in terms of the stakeholders, number of people you need to manage and corral and talk to, it's an average of 8 on the new customer side and 5 on the existing customer side, because like you said, you already have that familiarity. And so I do believe that, there's a tremendous art and science to new business sales. Like it's super important for us to get this right. We also know that the whole go to market sort of motion is way less efficient than it used to be. Like everyone's just having a harder time out there selling right now, which, in my view, makes it even more important to keep the customers we already have. We go through so much effort to acquire a customer. If they churn before the CAC payback period, right? So if they leave before we hit that window of them becoming profitable, we're literally just shoveling cash into the furnace. Like we're doing nobody any favors whatsoever. How do you guys start to think about the economic arguments here and the dynamics of this? Like, how deep has your analysis gone? What have you found when you start to look at all that?
Well, I mean, in terms of install base and driving upsell, I mean, obviously there's things that are already in place, right? You already have an MSA, right? You already have some sort of contractual terms and vehicles there. So, typically to your point, right, there's probably less approval cycles you have to go through to add something on versus to do a new vendor approach. I think it's interesting you mentioned those deal cycles. I'll say right now for us, interesting enough, it's flip flop between new logo and install base, and I think we have an interesting dichotomy because that in the new logo side we're focused specifically in kind of on our our, we'll call it product set that we've been focused on the last 5 years, AI and the automation pieces. Where in the install base, we have our legacy product set, which is our SIP telephony piece, and that's where they really know us. And so we have a burden of knowledge and perceived, here's the box you fit in, that we have to overcome. So when you look at some of the metrics, in the early days of the early adoption in our install base, the metrics aligned to kind of what you quoted. The install base stuff was faster. Now that we've kind of gotten through some of those early adopters, and we're in years 3, 4 of this motion on the install base, it's kind of flipping on us, right? Because we got those early adopters and the ones where we had the best relationships. And so we look at those metrics and say, hey, what are the average deal times, average deals, deal cycles, right? Where are we losing deals in stage? And we look at it across not only install base, but we look at in our new logo motions, we have direct and indirect motions. So we're looking at all those things and saying, where's the funnel coming from? What are the deal cycles? What are the deal amounts? And, forecasting, for that to, the leadership team, the rest of the leadership team and the board of how that contributes to revenue quarter over quarter, and outlooking quarters related to the bookings you're going to get from each of those components are key things. So you have to look at all that data and say, all right, how's this? If we're talking to an install base customer about these AI products, is that 9 months from now in a sales cycle whether that's going to deliver revenue? And how's that look against new logo where, interestingly enough, we're at 90 days on some of the stuff we're targeting. So you have to look at the data that's relevant to you, right? There, you take your experience, and the data can change at any time, right? There's trends in the data, even within an organization.
That's super interesting. And so what you're describing is, because you have existing relationships that go back years, or 5 years, 10 years, stuff like this, the customer already has an assumption about what you provide, right? They're like, hey, this is the box that IntelePeer is in. When I have this problem, I go to IntelePeer, but when I have a different problem, I go somewhere else. And now you're launching a new product set, and you're going back to the customers and saying, look at this new thing, and you have to reset their mental model about what you do, right? You have to like coach and guide them through this, so they can say, oh, now I see that you do this other thing too. This is such a big deal for account management teams, because the customer just gets stuck in this groove of like, here's the box, here's the problem I'm trying to solve, and I call your company, okay, great. And then they go like chase the bouncing ball around the room when it's time for something else. And you're like, no, hang on, we do this also, we do this too. And so a lot of it is like coaching and reframing for the customers. So how do you guide your team? Like, how do you coach your account managers to break through that wall, to have that conversation?
Well, I think it's a key point to being successful in that dichotomy is being able to develop relationships up into the organization, right? When I look at our customer advisory board, it's made up of, strategic leaders at our install base customers, commonly CIOs in the technology space, who we've built a trust over the years and developed relationships. And, they know that, IntelePeer equals trust, and they know we're going to deliver. And so when we introduce and talk about new capabilities, they want to hear about that. In the cases where we haven't developed that relationship, that's where we're in that box and we're trying to work to get out of the box. And so the challenge is in that model, and this has been a learning for us over the last, we'll call it 12 to 18 months, you have to make sure you don't neglect serving what they bought from you in the first place, right? And why they're working for you. You can't just always come and say, hey, we want to talk to you about this new stuff, this cool stuff, this AI stuff. You have to take care and make sure they're happy with everything else that's there, and still continue to serve. Actually, we have a mantra that I have a new VP of account management who's joined the organization, and she has this mantra called serve, retain, and then sell, right? You have to earn the right and the trust to be able to talk about these other things, right? So you have to take care of the people that have bought your original service, make sure they're happy, and earn the trust to either have them introduce you up in the organization or into a different group who's interested in our other capabilities around AI. And so it's having that balance between looking for the upsell, but also taking care of the existing solutions and making sure that they're happy with what we're doing. We're addressing today's needs um, before we talk about tomorrow's opportunities, right? And so it is a delicate balance. And if you shift one way too far, right, you see that impact in terms of gross retention rates or net retention rates. And you might have short-term uptick in NRR, but that could come swing down and hit you on the backside in GRR in a couple quarters down the road. So you got to make sure you have that balance.
Yeah, I mean, totally fair point. The customer doesn't care about your cool new thing that's coming down the road if you haven't solved their problem today. And so I like the serve, retain, and sell elements there. Uh, Tell us about how you've brought that serve, retain, and sell into practice.
Yeah, so I will say, and again, I got to give kudos to the team. I brought in a new leader by the name of Samantha Gott, so call out to Samantha, who kind of put this together. But it's really saying, hey, when we look at we have our customers segmented, right? We look at an enterprise segment and then other groups. But when we look at that enterprise segment, they represent roughly, two-thirds of our revenue, let's say directionally. How do we make sure that those customers are happy first, right? And you really have to say, and then some of them we've leaned the wrong way over the last couple of years, where we kind of say AI, AI, AI. They're like, we've got this project, right? And we haven't kept the eye maybe fully on the ball on some of the other components. And so it's really making sure, kind of call it getting back to the basics, right? In terms of you know, making sure when we're doing a business review, we're at least addressing, here's your services, here's other work, what's changed with your business, are there any things we need to adjust relative to your existing services before we talk about anything on the new side, right? And then earning the right, the trust to get the meetings with the people that we want to get to, right? And so um, some organizations are going to lean forward on that. Some people in director and other rules are going to lean forward. They're going to say, "Hey, this is interesting. And I want to, learn more about this." And go. And some are going to say, "I don't care about the piece. I only care about the piece that you guys, provide for me today." Right? Other people work on that. Like you can go talk to them, but maybe they will broker, but you got to earn that trust.
When you think about your back to basics that you were just talking about there, uh, how would you frame your like non-negotiables when it comes to how an account management team should operate? The reason I ask is people are all over the place. Some people are like, we do QBRs religiously. Some people don't do them at all. Some people do account plans, with a lot of rigor and discipline. Some people put less emphasis on them. Some people do have a very structured way of doing customer discovery, for example. Like, what are your just kind of like do or die non-negotiables when it comes to account managers?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and obviously, as we talked about some of the, we've been exposed to some of the great stuff that you have brought to market with the account management framework and those pieces. I think for me, it is really everything's about anchors in developing a relationship with your customer, because if you have a trust in a good relationship with your customer, it can cover for other gaps that maybe you have in blind spots. So number one thing is getting out and meeting and knowing your customer, right? Know them on a personal level, right? And you can't do that. I will say that's a key account approach, right? You can't do that, for 1,000 accounts, but you can do that for the top 200. And so that's critically important, right? Because if you have those relationships, you're going to learn about those other things that are out there. But I think from that, having an account plan, it is critically important to knowing, right, who are the people that know us, who don't know us, who we need to get to, who are the other, technology players in the ecosystem that we know are related or unrelated, and how do we work our way, through that organization. And if you have a good relationship with a customer and you know them at a personal level, you can, ask things, say, hey, are you able to share this with me? Or, can you point me in the right direction? But you can't, or I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this problem we're seeing at other customers. You can even get their advice, but I think it really anchors in you got to put that face time in there, and you got to be proactive, and you can't just go to them when it's time for renewal or you're trying to sell them something, right? It's too late at that point.
Totally. Now, when it comes to account plans, so
Hmm.
that's one of the things you just listed here. There's a big gap between theory and practice when it when it comes to account plans. Uh,
Yes.
so in the on the practice side, Mike, uh, how how do you structure these? How often are they done? How often are they reviewed? What do you do with the people who are half-assing it? Not that that would ever happen inside IntelePeer, but let's just say
Yeah.
hypothetically, like literally, what does this look like?
Well, and I'll say, throughout my, we'll call it account management 10-year years, right? You go in and out of, we'll call it compliance and applying these. I think one of the big things I try to do with anything around this data is don't make it a regurgitation of stuff that's available in other sources. Like, I don't want an AM or even a new logo rep, if we're working on a QBR for them, spending time producing data that's already there, like revenue run rates, revenue trends, contacts, any of the things that we can know, tickets, like that should just be data that's available. We review it. They don't have to produce it, right? And so you can look at an account plan and you look at a lot of it is around existing contacts and revenue and what's going on. That part should just be free, if you will. It should just be there, right? And or if it's not easy to get, it's the burdens on the leadership to deliver and say, hey, we're going to go through this stuff, but you don't have to produce it, right? We're going to provide it. We'll review it. I need you to focus on these two or three key areas that are really dependent on your account knowledge, right? Who are the other players in there, right? Where do you think the white space is relative to the customer? And where, you know, we actually put together a health score mechanism that kind of looks at a bunch of different data and produce it. What are those things based on the health score? And if you're in a red according to the health score, what's your kind of get to green path, right? And so um, no matter of what we'll call it level of compliance, the base data should just be there and not have to be produced by the team. And then focus the team on the stuff that they can develop from the knowledge, right, from talking to the customer and learning about them, and learning their business.
Now, this kind of implies, I think it implies that there's a sales ops team or a sales enablement team or a CRM data team, someone there gathering stuff for people. This has been a big question point of mine is there's so much stuff around sales enablement, sales training, sales tools, et cetera. And then on the account management side, there's like nothing whatsoever. So do you have shared resources for both? Can the account managers tap into some type of ops or enablement function to help them get through this? How's
Yes.
that structured?
Yeah, we have a RevOps team that's a very critical point partner with everything we do, from revenue to commissions to data production, right? And so that's critical, right? And absolutely for our account management team, right? And so we actually have, and we have an enablement, group as well that is focused on not just new logo stuff, but account management stuff as well. And so it's critical to address both, right? And have that data. And I would think, at least from my experience, anything revenue ops, if it's truly revenue ops and not just sales ops, right? Revenue ops should have kind of the data sources across everything, right? And in our case, we do. We're fortunate to have that. It's not all in one easy system, but we can get to the data, right? And it's producible and it's in a way that can be analyzed and used.
Yeah, and this is a big deal. I mean, something we talk about within the Amplify community a lot is how we get support, how we get stood up, that getting all this infrastructure and stuff in place. We've had conversations about the role of AI in account management and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I just think it's really important for people to be willing to tap into those existing resources. But Mike, I want to come back to the account plan piece here for a second. So you and I have talked about this sort of stuff for many, many times in the past. And one of the things that always comes up with account plans is no matter how you pitch it, it still feels like a trip to the dentist, or it still feels like you're doing homework. And my question is, how do you frame an account plan based on the what's in it for me for the account manager? Like, how do we make this something that is something that is not only something that they want to do, but something that's good for them, that helps them, that increases the results versus, oh, this just feels like an administrative task my boss
Hmm.
told me to do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? And I'll take a step back. If you said, whether it's a salesperson or an account manager, and you said, hey, think about who is the most successful and how they prepared for meetings with a customer or a prospect or whatever the case might be. And they naturally would do the research and prepare the data to make sure that they know as much as possible about the customer or prospect before they walk into the door. They're not walking in cold, right? And you get credit for doing your homework when you're talking to a customer, right? If you can know the systems that they're on, if you can use their terminology, and to be successful and to sell, especially in key accounts, you've got to do that homework. And the account plan is your homework, right? If you don't know their key objectives, if you haven't read their annual report, if you don't know the key uh, systems, you can't help them and be effective. And so I would describe it as it's table stakes to doing the job, right? Whether you put it in a formal template or whatever, you need to know these things about your customer, and you can't expect to be able to serve them, grow them if you don't know these things. You're always going to be in reactive mode versus proactive mode would be the other thing I would say.
It's the deep dive on knowing your customer. I mean, basically, what you're saying is like, do this so that you don't look like an idiot when you go talk to your client, right? Because that's the risk. Is you walk in and you ask some question, they're like, "Yeah, we told you this 6 months ago," or "Yeah, we told the salesperson when they were here," or or whatever, and you just don't you lose credibility. You don't look smart if that's happening. Now, one thing that is, at least for me, something that comes up a lot that I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to codify this, Mike. By the way, I'm writing a book on account management, and one of the things that I'm writing about and wanting to learn more about is how do we know when an account manager is doing a good job? Like literally, what's the difference between a good account manager, a great account manager, and a bad account manager? I feel like on the sales side, it's easier. We sort of have this general metric of like, did they close business or not? On the account management side, what are you looking at to determine if someone is performing at your expectations? Like, what are the KPIs? What are the metrics? What are you looking at? Are you looking at only the lagging indicators like retention and growth from their book of business? Are you looking at leading indicators around activity? How do you think about that as a leader?
Yeah, so certainly I think it's got to be a blend of things, right? And this is kind of the delicate nature of account management is you obviously have to look at retention numbers, right? And where somebody is on their book of business relative to, net retention and gross retention. Um, but, then we also have, things like install base booking quotas, right? And so looking against how they're performing against that. But then there's other kind of leading indicators, right? It's funny as I meet with leaders on my team and we look at metrics. We have great, pretty decent tooling, whether it's Gong, obviously Salesforce, and it gives us a lot of data. We have a really good, again, our operations team from an enablement side and RevOps are very good at producing data for us. And so the ability to look at, all right, activity around, all right, how many external meetings did you have? And are you using the resources we have, whether they're our resources in our knowledge repository and other things. So part of what you look at as first pass is obviously where are you on the key metrics from an NRR, bookings, funnel development side from an account management standpoint. But then the next level is, all right, if you're not hitting on those numbers per se, or kind of a secondary look is how are you on external meetings? How are you on what percentage of your customers have you met with in person this year? Those other metrics that are the we'll call it the things you have to do to be able to get to the retention and earning the right to the upsell.
Okay. And how do you then weight those, and how much patience do you have? Like, what's the timeline if my growth number, my NRR numbers aren't coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you think about an AM, just, coming new into um, a company, or you get a new set of accounts, right? It takes, you know, 6 months to get your bearings on those accounts and know what's
Hmm.
going, and be able to even have any chance of developing any relationships, right? And so I think there is a curve there, right? Of, 6 to 12 months to really getting to any kind of ability to build the trust in an account base. And so, um, then so during that first, okay, 6 to 12 months period, it's really about those underpinning categories, right? Are you getting out to have those meetings? Are you, studying about your customers? Have you done account planning? What do you know around the data around those customers? Have you gone back, because we leverage Gone, have you gone back and listened to previous calls about that customer? Have you looked at tickets? What are you using as we'll call it the opportunities to serve throughout the relationship, right? If you're an account manager and you've got visibility into tickets, that should be a touch point. Say, hey, I see, you know, your issue was resolved. Was there anything else I can help you with? Anything you need, right? Just offering to help, right? And so doing some of those, I'll call it tactical steps to build trust along the way. So I think those are the things that you can measure. And if people are doing the right activities, it'll the rest will come.
Yeah. And so it's, I mean, based on when they started, where they are with you, the earlier stuff is around the leading indicators, doing the meetings, doing the activities, with the assumption that that will then produce results. Presumably, if you've been doing the leading activities for 12 or 18 months and you're not getting results, that's going to be a whole different conversation. Yeah. Well, cool. This is a great view. Super helpful to hear your philosophy on how to do this. I really like the serve, retain, and sell. I really like the perspective that you're bringing. Now, Mike, if someone here is they're an account manager today, they're excited about this idea of, like you, becoming a CRO one day. You've done it. You've lived this transition from managing single book of business to owning all of revenue for IntelePeer. Um, what's your advice as we close out here? Like, what's your advice on how to think, act, skills to develop if you want to be on that CRO trajectory?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would suggest is don't just work within your box or your lane, right? Look on how you can help the other teams that are codependent on what you're doing, right? So if your implementation, right, there's a relationship between sales and implementation and customer success, right? Usually the sellers, their commissions and things are tied to certain outcomes or things happening with the accounts. So making sure you're learning about what matters to them, and kind of being a student of the other groups, right? And building those relationships um, across an organization, because you're just going to learn, and you're going to learn what things you like to do, what things you're good at, what things you're not good at, what things maybe you need to work at. And so I think it's obviously got to take care of your own thing, but you can't have a mentality is like, well, I did my part, right? You've got to say, all right, well, I need this part. How can we work together to achieve that? Or what is in your way that's, impeding you from kind of doing this thing that we both need to happen, and kind of working with your counterparts, right? In an organization. And that's how you build knowledge and trust in the organization to get the opportunities to get into other roles, right? If you're just in your job and doing your part and saying, well, I did my part, they're not doing their part, you're not solving the problem for the leaders above you. And you need to say, hey, can I go work on this, or solve the problem? Say, and you run it by your leader and say, hey, we have this problem. I talked to our counterpart, and this is how I think we were thinking about solving it. Does that make sense to you? Right? If you're going to come with a problem, come with a solution, right? Or at least a hypothesis on a solution. That's the way you build trust across the organization and up the organization.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically saying like get out of your silo, solve the full problem. So don't just take responsibility for your little piece. Go figure out how you collaborate with people to solve whatever the bigger issue is.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, cool. Fantastic. Well, Mike Rapp, CRO at IntelePeer, thanks so much for joining me on Account Management Secrets. Great to have you.
Thank you, Alex.